of either are going to polarize and they're going to cause a pushback. And the reason Toyota's Prius, even though it's a car that's joked about, it was a hybrid. It was the best of two worlds, and that's why it did fine. And yeah. I'm an independent. You pay the price to be an independent. You can't get a winner.
182 chapters in the book. Okay, and so it was written in 2019, right? So I can't remember from memory all of the details that I put into that book because
I'll tell you what. Then I will.
No, that's okay. No, I can tell you more. I can tell you much more.
Your character. I did want to read a couple of things people said about your book. They said, embracing the future, the book encourages adaptation and pivoting in a rapidly changing technological environment. The critical thinking and misinformation, that the author emphasizes the need to think critically and guard against misinformation in the digital age. And I'll just go with one more. Chanos includes lessons on self-improvement, psychology, relationship, and finding purpose, leading a meaningful life. The book aims to help readers lead a happy, successful, and meaningful life. And there's a lot more that's been said, but those are really good accolades. I mean, that's the best, well-rounded amount of accolades I could ever hope for anybody receiving.
There are about 50 reviews on Amazon.
Yes.
It's been called a secular Bible for the 21st century. Visioning is putting sensors on all of those areas. So every nut and bolt would have a sensor. And if it becomes loose, then the sensor would send a signal. And the signal would dispatch a drone. And the drone would go up and tighten or replace the bolt. And that increased efficiency gets rid of the crew that is required today to work 7 days a week throughout the year, all year round, year after year, maintaining the integrity of this bridge, right? So it's just a far superior, more efficient use of resources. And so that team can be deployed into something else that they don't need to be doing that because technology can do that. And so this is.
Welcome to the Dr. Smiley Show. I am extremely excited because I read this man's book and I've seen him on stage so many times. But the last time I saw him in Las Vegas, he said these words. He says, I could talk for 2 weeks on this, literally. And so I said, George, I would love to have you on my show. Anyone that can talk 2 weeks about what they're passionate about certainly has a lot to say. So I went and bought the book on Amazon. And I will tell you, George, I do ask people to send me their book, but I said, this man is such a trophy as a person on the show that's going to really wake up my audience and let them know that, man, there's so much we can prepare for and so much we can win with. So, George, thank you for being on the show.
Well, first of all, I would have sent you my book. All you had to do is ask. But what I am going to do then is after this is over, I want you to give me your address. I'm going to send you a limited edition copy. I showed you just the hard copy.
Right.
That's a limited edition, but it comes in a black box.
Wow.
That is gorgeous, and it's really special. So I'm going to send you that, and so you will feel better about this one.
Well, there's actually, then I have to confess something to you. You may have given me one at Secret Knock, and I couldn't find it in my house, so I went to buy it.
Oh, okay.
But we've met at so many great events, and I just say it is really my big message is if you want to see the people that are making a difference in the world, get out of your comfort zone and go to those events. And sure enough, you'll see that they keep showing up. The ones that keep showing up are relentlessly going to change the world.
Yeah.
So we have a big show here. I want to say that it's going to pass by very quickly is my anticipation. And so
yeah, it will.
So I'm looking forward to sharing with the audience who you are, because that's going to be some learning for me as well. So let's start off with how you created who George is. Where were you born?
I was born in Wauwatosa, Wisconsin, in the middle of the Midwest.
There's something about Midwesterns. They have the unlocked door approach of everyone's a good person, because I am too.
Yeah. Yeah. My mom was, her parents were Norwegian immigrants, and my father's parents were Greek immigrants. So I'm Norwegian and Greek, Viking and Spartan, which is why I became a litigator.
And of course that's why the samurai had to come about.
Yeah.
All right, and so tell us what your childhood was like, but more importantly, what was a defining moment that may have happened in your childhood?
Well, first of all, I had a a pretty fascinating childhood. My parents were my dad was, as I said, the son of Greek immigrants. He was kind of salt of the earth, never went to college, but just a really solid, good man. And I learned a lot about character and integrity from my father and his brothers. It kept me on a straight path because I never would have wanted to do anything that would have brought dishonor on my father or his family or his brothers, or my mother for that matter. But my mother was very different. They were night and day. My mom was a model in Chicago in the 50s. She was a career woman, and her picture was on the side of buses. And
Wow.
so she was a unique woman. They divorced when I was 1 year old. And so I was shuttling back and forth between Wauwatosa, Wisconsin, and Las Vegas, Nevada, where my mom moved and remarried. And my whole life was essentially going back and forth. I was transferring by myself at Chicago's O'Hare Airport when I was 8 years old. So I'd be dropped off in Milwaukee on the plane. The stewardess would, take me to the plane. And then once I'm on the plane, I'd land, and my mom would be there to pick me up. But one time I overslept on the plane and ended up at JFK. And for an 8 or a 10-year-old, this is kind of a big deal. But what I learned about that was that there's opportunity in adversity. So from a very young age, what looked like an adversity became an opportunity for me. I traveled more than anyone of my friends in Wauwatosa or Las Vegas, and I was in two different worlds. I was in, the heart of the Midwest, grounded, and I was in the playground of the world, Las Vegas. And so, and I had very different parents. So I took from each of them, and I became what I became.
I thought you were going to say that when you overslept and you went to JFK, that spawned the idea of Home Alone, and you drafted the first.
Yeah, yeah. No, no.
So that would be very unique, and I think very good for the independence and also the taste of what it is to travel.
Yeah. And you wanted to get insight into who I am, and so you asked about the most formative moment.
Yeah.
That probably wasn't it, although it was, certainly a big part of my life and my kind of development. Probably the epiphany moment that I had in my life. The Danish philosopher Kierkegaard says that in order to understand, you can only understand life going backward. We have to live life going forward, but we understand it looking back. And so when I was 6 years old, I was in Las Vegas with my mom, and we were driving down Paradise Road, and it came over the radio that Kennedy had been assassinated.
Hmm.
And my mom pulled the car to the side of the road, and she started crying. And, as a 6-year-old boy, this was impressionable, right? So we went home to our little apartment. She turned on the TV. And for the next, several weeks, I was glued to the TV. And all they were talking about was the Kennedy assassination. Who was this man, this fallen hero that, had this outpouring, international outpouring of love and affection for this fallen hero? And I watched the parade with the riderless horse, and I watched his little son, standing there at the funeral. And I told my mom when I was 6, I said, I want to be him.
Hmm.
I want to be president. And it was kind of a pretty remarkable thing for a 6-year-old boy, first of all, to want to be president, after seeing a president that got assassinated,
Right.
right? Why do you want to be the guy who got shot? And then to think that you could be, right? Where did I get the belief that I even could be? And so that was an epiphany moment for me. And then by the time I was 10, I was watching Perry Mason on TV, and I was objecting to the television because I had read some, small books on presidents, and they said that roughly 3/4 of them were lawyers. So I knew that I would have to be a lawyer. So I, got into Perry Mason, and then by the time I was 12, my mom set up a luncheon for me at the Sahara Hotel in Las Vegas with a gentleman named Sig Front. And Sig Front was the marketing director for the Sahara Hotel. He was a British man, and he was a very interesting, gifted marketer. And so he takes me into the Sahara restaurant, and it's got these, red leather booths. And we sit down, and it's the first time I've, been taken out to the Strip to a restaurant like this with a businessman. And he says, George, I understand you want to be president. My mom told him that I wanted to be president. And he said, okay, let's plan it out. And so he took a placemat and he turned it over and he drew a matrix of lines, boxes. And in those boxes, he filled out the different positions that I should occupy as I was moving forward through life, like, running for class president and student body president and going to work for Senator Laxalt and, running for the assembly and running for the state senate and running for Congress and going to law school. And all these things were laid out on this placemat. And I began to execute on that vision. And so I was class president and I was student body president. And I did go to Washington and I did work for Laxalt. And then I came back and I did go to law school. And so I followed that path. But I also had another epiphany moment along the path. And that was when I was in Washington working for Laxalt. I was in the Russell Senate office building. And it was during ABSCAM. And I'm in the elevator alone going down to the lobby. There's a lot of commotion in the lobby. There's an international press corps gathered in the lobby. The elevator doors open up as I'm on my way down. I'm alone in the elevator. In walk the ABSCAM co-conspirators. They're about to resign in front of an international press corps, and they have their wives. And I'm watching this, and I'm thinking, it's another epiphany moment. I'm thinking, I don't want to be one of these guys.
Right.
So what am I going to do? How am I going to bulletproof myself from ever ending up in this situation? Because that would bring dishonor on my family, and I never want to do that. So how do I bulletproof myself? And I thought, well, these guys, took money. Why did they take money? Well, they took money because they wanted nice things and they didn't have any money. Well, I want nice things and I don't have any money. So might I fall to the same temptation? And so I thought, well, you know what? I'm going to have to go out and make money. I'm going to have to detour on this path. I'm going to have to make money before I go into politics so I can sit across the table from anyone and I can say to them, if what you want is good government, then I'm your guy. But if what you want is something more, then keep your money, because I don't need it. I have my own, right? And I wanted to be in that position before I went into politics. So that's what I did. So I ended up graduating from law school. I worked for one of the world's largest law firms. Then I opened up my own firm, and I was quite successful as a small boutique practice. And then I did some real estate investing, and I did a deal where I bought a piece of property for $2.5 million, 3.5 acres, and I put it in escrow 4 months later for $10 million. So it's a $7.5 million profit. Mm-hmm. And I closed on the 1-year anniversary of that purchase for $10 million. And it's a very creative transaction. If we, had the time, I could go into how I bought a piece of property for $2.5 million, 4 months later, had it in escrow for $10 million, and then sold it 1 year later for $10 million. It was a very creative transaction. But in any case, I did it, and I made that windfall. And lo and behold, as fate would have it, the managing director of the state's largest law firm, a gentleman by the name of Joe Brown, I'm at the Trinidad fight at the MGM. In walks Joe Brown, and he says, George, I've been thinking about you. And I thought, really? About what, Joe? And Joe has become a mentor since then. And he said, well, the current Attorney General, Brian Sandoval, is going to resign to become a federal judge, and it's going to create a 2-year vacancy. And the governor has asked me to find the replacement, and I think you'd be great. Would you be willing to do it? And it shot me back to when I was 6 years old, and it shot me back to the elevator. And I had just done this real estate deal with a $7.5 million windfall. I finally had enough money to sit across the table from anyone and say, I don't need your money. I don't need your $10,000 check, right?
Right.
So I said yes, and I shut down my lucrative law practice, and I became Nevada's 31st Attorney General. Now, when I got in, I loved the work and I loved the law. I argued before the United States Supreme Court. I won 9-0, and I loved that part of it. But I hated the politics. I was good at raising money. I had raised $1.2 million in the first 3 months. My opponent, who is now a United States senator, raised $165,000 to my $1.2 million. So I had a 5-to-1 fundraising advantage, and I was the incumbent. And I decided politics was not for me. It was toxic. It was dysfunctional. It was polarized. I was a moderate Republican. I was what they called a rhino, a Republican in name only. So I was socially liberal, but I was fiscally conservative, foreign policy conservative, fiscally conservative, socially liberal. And I didn't really fit in either box, a Republican box or a Democrat box. I wanted to be in the middle. I believed that in a nation of, what are we, like 340 million people now, that when you are equally divided, and we were very divided even back 15 years ago when I was AG, when you are in a nation that is equally divided, you cannot lead from the right or from the left. You must lead from the center. And I was a centrist, and I still am a centrist. And I believe, that's what was called for in office, because you're supposed to be representing everyone. It's not about you. It's about everyone that you're representing. So anyway, politics wasn't like that. It was very divisive. Because I was a Republican, Democrats didn't want to have anything to do with me. And because I, had liberal beliefs on some issues, I didn't really see a future in the Republican Party. And so what I did was I finished my term. I went out with a 9-0 win before the U.S. Supreme Court, and then I gave all the money back. By law, I could have kept it. I gave all the money back to my contributors, and I raised money for my Democratic opponent, and she became the Attorney General, and now she's a U.S. Senator. And so that's sort of my political history and my political thought process. I'm a centrist. I cherry pick the best ideas that I hear coming out of the Republican Party and the very best ideas that I hear coming out of the Democratic Party. And I embrace the ideas, not the party.
I know, because it's in the two-party system chapter.
Yeah, it is. It is.
And I love the way you communicate it, because radical ends of either are going to polarize, and they're going to cause a pushback. And the reason Toyota's Prius, even though it's a car that's joked about, it was a hybrid. It was the best of two worlds, and that's why it did fine. And I'm an independent. You pay the price to be an independent. You can't get a winner.
Yeah.
But George, I kid with people that are Republicans and Democrats, staunch ones, I should say, because when they say that they are, and they tell me who their hero is, I go, well, what if that hero had been on the other party? Would you have switched?
Yeah.
And that's what a centrist gets the liberty of doing, is that you get to pick who's going to best represent the country.
Yeah. Well, one of my heroes was Abraham Lincoln.
Right. He was a Republican.
He was a Republican. He was a Republican, but he was a good man.
Yes.
And he did what was right for the country. And I think that's the only kind of, politician that I could stomach or could ever be. I just think When you come from the law, you understand the concept of a fiduciary obligation. A fiduciary is the highest duty known under the law. You have a fiduciary obligation to your clients as a lawyer. As a trustee, you have a fiduciary obligation to the beneficiary. I believe politicians have a fiduciary obligation to all constituents, to all voters, not just the ones who elected them, and not just their party, but to all citizens that they represent.
And that's one of the things that I love about what I learned about Lincoln is that he stacked his cabinet with people that did not like him.
Yes,
And
yes,
that's a crazy thing to do, but he did it so
yeah,
he would represent everybody equally. And
yeah.
I'm guessing you saw the movie Lincoln by Spielberg.
I did. Yes, yes,
Did you know that obviously Daniel Day-Lewis played Lincoln and was unbelievable. But
yeah. He's such a great actor.
he is, but did you know the backstory on that by any chance?
Not really, no.
So Spielberg wrote this and got the screenplay and everything, and only thought of Spielberg, just like the gentleman who thought about you as Attorney General. I mean, he says,
Yeah,
"You're my guy," and
yeah,
Daniel says, "I'm not Lincoln.
yeah.
I don't sound like him. There's nothing about it." And Spielberg says, "What would it take?" And he says, "If you'll hold off doing the movie for a couple of years, and if I find that I can master his voice and his demeanor, and I believe it, then I'll accept it. We're looking at about a 2-year deal." And Spielberg says, "I'll wait."
Oh, wow. That's
And
amazing.
it is, but he got the movie he wanted. He knew the man
Yeah,
was going to do it right. So that's
yeah. And he was the perfect choice. There really
oh
was no other choice.
gosh, that script, it makes me get goosebumps. That was so well written. Every
Yeah,
single line of every, I mean, it was
yeah,
so well thought out. And to represent that deep dive in our country's turmoil and have it just so eloquently put, it just oh,
yeah,
you might cause me to watch that again tonight.
yeah, yeah. Me too, maybe.
So you reference fatherhood. I was sometimes when I'm looking away, I'm looking for the chapter I should have dog-eared, but I didn't want to do it to this book. But fatherhood's really a big deal for you, because you
Yeah,
being a good father, and it is to me as well. And we found that we have quite a bit in common. Before we go to fatherhood, your dad taught you character,
yeah.
and what was the actual lesson he taught you saw it?
He taught by example. I lived with him back and forth between him and my mother, and he drove us to school every day. That shows a lot of character, right?
Yep.
He never gave me an allowance intentionally because he wanted me to learn the value of money on my own. So I had to go out and earn it,
Right.
which means that at 10 years old, I was shoveling snow out of people's driveways. I was cutting lawns. I was doing anything and everything that I could to make money as a 10-year-old and a 12-year-old. And I was very industrious. I ended up having more money than any of my friends that had allowances
Hmm.
because I was out there earning it,
Right.
right? And he never, he never spent, or he wasn't a consumer. He didn't have a lavish lifestyle. He lived a very Spartan life. So he wasn't into glitz and glam and consumption. And he cared about his family most. I mean, we had the most wonderful Christmases and the most wonderful Thanksgivings, and all the cousins and the grandparents and the aunts and the uncles, and everybody would gather. It was a Greek family, so it was a very family focused upbringing with my dad. And my mom, I toured around the world and did things that saw a very different side of things. If you ever saw the movie Auntie Mame, my mom, or the Broadway play Auntie Mame, my mom was like Auntie Mame, but my dad was the opposite. He was just very, very grounded. So he was honest. If he said something, his word was his bond. You could bank on it. He's just that kind of a guy. And what was interesting was so were both of his two brothers. So my Uncle Tom and my Uncle Steve were the same way. And so all three of them were a tremendous example of character and integrity and dependability and truthfulness. And so, yeah, I got that every day from just watching them. They didn't have to sit down and tell me anything.
So hence your grandfather taught them.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, my dad caught me doing something wrong one day, and I actually he didn't catch me. I divulged it, and he says, "You'll never do that again." He made me return the candy that I had taken, and so you learn that your dad's all about it, and you just don't deviate again.
Yeah, my mom actually did that to me. I stole an 8 ball, an 8 ball from like Hallmark Cards or something at the Boulevard Mall in Las Vegas. So yeah, it's so funny. I was going out that day. I walked to the mall, and as I was leaving to walk to the mall, my mom said, "Do you have any money?" And I said, "No." And she said, "Okay." And so I go off to the mall and I come back with this 8 ball. And so she instantly knew
Right.
that, I must have stolen it because I didn't have any money. And so she got me in the car. She drove me back to the Hallmark Cards. She walked in with me with the 8 ball. She put it on the counter and she said, "I need you to call security." And the woman said, "Well, what do you mean? You're returning it. It's okay." And she said, "No, I need you to call security." And so security came and gave me a hard time, right?
Right.
And then my mom was like egging them on, "No, take him away, have him arrested, right?"
Right.
And just like scaring the shit out of me. And it worked,
Well,
it
that's
worked.
certainly a defining moment. Your book starts off with a deep dive into core values and core principles, and mindfulness. And one of my favorite classes I took was critical thinking. But let's take a direction of mindfulness and the core and principal values, and go to it as you wish.
Okay. Well, so first of all, there's 182 chapters in the book. Okay. And so it was written in 2019, right? So I can't remember from memory all of the details that I put into that book
Well, I'll
because
tell you what. Then I
no,
will.
no, no, that's okay. No, I can tell you more. I can tell you much more. But there's going to be things that I miss, and so what I might do is look at the book on certain things, okay, and
Yes.
and explain why that can be good, okay? Because like any other parent, I want you to think about something. So the people that are watching, think about something. Let's talk about character, right? I feel that I know a great deal about character. I under It's sort of like though the justice of the Supreme Court who said, what's obscenity, and he said, "I know it when I see it." Right. So you know character when you see it,
Mhm.
um, and you may not be able to spell out all the elements, right? And either can I, but I did in the book, and the way I did that was to sit down deeply and think about these things and break it down and make a list of all the things that I thought go into character and then explain each of those things. So there were two University of Pennsylvania professors who wrote an 800-page treatise on character. Okay. So character is a deep subject. If these people wrote 800 pages on it, right? So here's why I think that the book can be very helpful to parents, because when they want to teach their child about character, they're not going to know everything that they need to say, right? But if they have something like this that's just 2 pages long, right? They can look at that and they can go through it, and they can and character is the sum total of all of the things that go into our personalities that make us dependable, that make us honest, that make us reliable, that make us trustworthy. That's essentially character is what you would do when no one is looking, right? So But when you really break it down, what is it? It's integrity. Well, what does integrity mean? Integrity means being true to your word, means honoring your commitments and being dependable and trustworthy. A person who has integrity is a person you can count on. Have integrity and surround yourself only with people who have integrity. Then it goes into honor, and it goes into truthfulness, and it goes into dependability, and it goes into diligence and humility and punctuality and sincerity and tolerance and generosity. All of these things contribute to character, right? So
Back up.
what's great about the book is that if you want to sit down and have a conversation with your child about character, instead of having a conversation that'll last, 10 seconds or 20 seconds or 30 seconds or a minute, right? If you have the book, you can read it to them and then you can discuss it with them, right? So you can read these 2 pages or have them read the 2 pages and have them come back to you to discuss character and to tell you what they learned, right? So that's how any parent in the world can teach their child character in a comprehensive and fundamental way that creates a lasting lesson. And that is the purpose of this book, whether it's character, whether it's gratitude, whether it's compassion, whether it's courage or creativity or overcoming fear. These are all things that are laid out in the book in that fashion that allow a parent to go deeper without having to, buy a book on character and read 200 pages that they don't need to read, that they don't need to read and their child doesn't need to read. 2 pages are enough. Moments change lives. We talked about my epiphany moments in the car. We talked about it in the elevator. Les Brown talks about a teacher named Mr. Washington that created an epiphany moment for him that put his life on a whole new trajectory. Moments change lives. And what's great about Millennial Samurai is that it's full of those moments that will change you as you read it, and moments that'll change your child as they read it. And it's really an exceptional learning tool for parents to share with their young people. That's why I wrote it. And that's, I'll tell you something, as a parent, there are many things. I have a 27-year-old daughter right now. She was 15 when I wrote this book. And there are many things, actually 15, I think, when I had the heart attack, that led to the writing of my books. But in any case, out of all the things that I will leave her, and I mean this very sincerely, out of all the things that I will leave my daughter, there's nothing that I will leave her that is more important right now than this book. Okay. Because, the money, the stock, the land, all of those things, if she meets the wrong guy, she could lose everything. Right. But if she has the wisdom and the good judgment to, pick the right guy, then she'll build a life of happiness and fulfillment. And she won't lose everything. They'll build upon it all together. So that's what I want for her. And the way that, I only have so many years on this planet, so much time to teach her directly. And so I've left this for her as basically, if I were to go into the Amazon, if I were going to send someone into the Amazon rainforest and I were going to create a duffel bag for them filled with water and a knife and rope and a compass and something to start fires and all the things that I would put in that duffel bag. You can think of many more that you would put in that duffel bag. This is my daughter's duffel bag for the 21st century. It's 182 chapters that are only 1 to 3 pages each, and the time spent in each of those chapters will yield a benefit that far exceeds the value of the time invested in reading it. So that's what I've tried to do with Millennial Samurai, and it is book 1. There will be a book 2 and a book 3. So we can talk about that. I'm also working on a digital learning platform. It's called Uvolution. It's like the word evolution with a U. So uvolution.io. And what I've done is I've taken the chapters in the book and I've created micro learning lessons that you can have on your phone. So in less than 3 minutes, your child can open up, can either go to the website or can open up the app, and they can learn in 3 minutes about character. But they don't have to learn it by necessarily reading the book. There will be audio that they can listen to. There will be videos that they can watch, and or they can read the articles that are short and concise. And then they take a quiz. It's a 5-question quiz. It's true or false and multiple choice. So they read a lesson or they watch a video or they listen to an audio, and then they take a 5-question quiz that reinforces what they just learned. And it's all online, all accessible over their phone. And then you as a parent, if they give you access, which you can request and say, you want those Air Jordans, you want that, game player or whatever, I want you to go to Uvolution. I want you to download the app, and I want you to do these lessons. It begins with 100 lessons called the essentials that are 3 minutes each. So, in less than 3 minutes times 100, 5 hours, right? 5 hours, they can take all of this information and learn. They will be different people. I'm telling you, you will notice a difference in your child after they go through this. And I think every child should be doing this. I think every employee should be doing this. So this is part of legacy. This is part of my well-lived life, right? So I'm on this planet for how long, right? A limited time. And how do I make the most of my one and only life? Do I just go out and accumulate more? Do I just go out and make more money? Do I try to get that plane that I don't need or want? Do I try to get a bigger house? Hell, I want to get rid of this house. I want to downsize. I have a friend who's an IBM scientist. He's absolutely brilliant. His name's Jeff Chanos. And he sold everything. He sold his house in Venice. He sold his car collection. He had 80 triathlon medals. He gave them all away. He gave away everything that does not fit in a backpack. Now he can go anywhere in the world. He's totally mobile. He has total freedom. He's living his life, his best life, in an amazing way. So to me, there were periods in my life where I went through an accumulation phase, right? I bought all sorts of things. I bought more clothes than I needed. I bought more cars than I needed. I bought more furniture and rugs than I needed. I don't need any of that today. I'm 67 years old, right? I don't need any of that today. So I wish I could. I'm being tied down by it. So I'm in the process of selling things off and creating greater mobility. My wife and I want to go live in Tokyo for a year, So, I mean, it's about, and so this writing, this creation of Uvolution, the writing of Millennial Samurai, it's all about living a well-lived life. Part of living a well-lived life is giving back. It's making a difference. I think I mentioned that I'm Greek and part Greek, and the Greeks don't judge a man by the monuments that are built to him or by the assets that he's acquired. They judge him at death by the impact he has had on other people's lives. How many lives has he changed, right? I've got a friend who's a very successful guy. And he told me once, he said, I want to have 10 beautiful women crying at my funeral that nobody knows. And I'm like, man, what are you kidding? Like, do you hate your wife?
This
Why,
kind of
why would you want to do that to your wife? Right? but that was kind of his dream, right? So my dream is I would like to have 1,000 millennial samurai crying at my funeral.
Wow.
That's what I would like. I would like 1,000 people. I've had people write me who said, your book changed my life. Had a young man write me, say, your book spoke to me like the father I never had. I had a prison inmate who was, I spoke to 100 prisoners at Hope for Prisoners. One of them several came up to me, but one of them came up to me and said, I want to be a millennial samurai. That's what I want. I want, I'll be giving away boxes of books at every prison in Nevada. I want to change lives, you know?
It's evident. When my dad brought me back with that candy bar I had taken, when we left, he says, "Your character is everything. Don't ever jeopardize your character. You can lose
Yeah.
everything else in life, but you cannot lose your character." I did want to read a couple of things people said about your book. They said, "Embracing the future, the book encourages adaptation and pivoting in a rapidly changing technological environment. The critical thinking and misinformation that the author emphasizes the need to think critically and guard against misinformation in the digital age." And I'll just go with one more. Chanos includes lessons on self-improvement, psychology, relationship, and finding purpose, leading a meaningful life. The book aims to help readers lead a happy, successful, and meaningful life. And there's a lot more that's been said, but those are really good accolades. I mean, that's the best, well-rounded amount of accolades I could ever hope for anybody receiving. Um, you
There are
had
about there are about 50 reviews on Amazon.
Yes.
It's been called a secular Bible for the 21st century. Someone called it a masterpiece. It's gotten some amazing reviews.
Well, you had done this book, and I would call it almost a download of your heart, your mind, your spirit for your daughter. You have one daughter, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Um, you know, my son and I have done a book together, and I just want to say that we have a lot in common. And my son, at only age 10, I think it was, he did a book with me, and I want to send this book to you as a thank you since you're sending me. I want to send you a couple books actually, but this book right here is Conversations with the One You Love. And he picked 50 questions. I picked 50 questions. And then after that, we went ahead and took all the answers out and made a book that just called Conversations for the Ones You Love.
I love that. I love that. And I love the fact that you worked on that with him. That's something that is very formative for a child. It's something that shows him what's possible, what can be done, how he can do things. You know Greg Reed well, right?
I think that's how we met originally.
Yeah, so Greg Reed runs Secret Knock for the last 20 years, and he's got a son named Colt. And Greg is that way with his son. He travels all over with him. He shows him what he's doing. He gives him the hands-on experience of what it's like to do what Greg does. That's what you did with your child with that book. And that's what we need to do. I had my daughter in my law office. I was in my stepfather's law office when I was young. These are, formative learning opportunities to help our children move forward with their lives and show them, take their hand and show them what's possible and show them what you do and show them what they can do. And the opportunities for people like your son today are absolutely unbelievable. Unbelievable. I mean, if I had these opportunities when I was his age, I can't imagine what I would have created, because you've now got, ChatGPT 5, you've got all of these different tools, AI tools, image generation tools. You can make your own movies. I mean, I had a friend in high school who wanted to make movies, and he would, have a camcorder, and we'd drive around on our 10 speeds, and he would be filming things. Today, you can master an AI program like Sora, and you can create 3-minute cinematic films. So you can write out an idea. In fact, you can go to ChatGPT. You don't even have to. This is how simple it is. Okay, you can say, ChatGPT, I have an idea for a movie. This is what I have.
Right.
Right. and you could have very little, you know. My sister talks about creating, movies of like a cowboy bar, and she's got these characters that are going to be in the cowboy bar, and it's sort of a comedy. She could just lay out what her general idea is to ChatGPT, and she could ask ChatGPT to write a script, and ChatGPT could write the script for her. And then she could take that script and she could feed it into Sora, which is a cinematic program. And she could say, here's the script. I want you to create the characters. I want you to put them in the bar. I want them to interact with each other as they're saying these lines. And, before you know it, she's got a little 3-minute film. You could enter that film into international contests. You could play it on social media and develop a following. You could, if it was really, really good, and you played it on social media, and it started to go viral, what would happen would be you would eventually get a call from a studio in Hollywood, and they would say, listen, if you could do this, right? If you could create this, we love the idea. We love the characters. We love what you did with this. Come work for us, right? You want to do real films on the big screen, right? That's what we do. But we need creative geniuses like you. So you can show your creative genius by just doing a little 3-minute. This already happened. This isn't just this isn't just me theorizing what could happen. There was a guy. There was a guy who came out with this crazy thing. Okay, he did an animated character. You're not going to believe this, and it's a little it's a little gross. But he came up with an animated character that would crap on screen. Right, this little guy would walk out and he would take a dump. And he would do this over and over again in different cities, in different settings with this little animated character. And it went viral. And he got hired by Hollywood. He got a contract to make films, all off of that, right? So if he can do it with that, and this was years ago. This was like 10 years ago. So if he could do it with that, none of this technology existed back then. Now you've got amazing technology. You're limited only by your imagination.
100%. There's so many talking points. I told you the other day when I emailed you, I said, okay, we need 3 shows. But I want to say that there was a part about digital nomads, and you've spoken on the fact that you can design your own life in a backpack and you can actually have the life you want traveling the world. Since you just said eat poop, I just want to say there's even a chapter about that.
Yeah, yeah.
And why don't you just, since we haven't gone there, just give a quick little 1 minute about eating poop.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah. So I think the chapter is called Eat Shit.
It is.
But yeah, yeah. But you're being gracious. But anyway, yeah, what I discovered. So I spent about since 2012, I've been reading and researching about the future, right? And yeah, yeah. And so what I discovered was that sometimes when you develop bacteria in your gut, and a lot of people suffer from this type of an issue. I have gastritis. Many people suffer from the same thing. The foods that we eat contain, chemicals. They contain pesticides. They contain plastics. They contain metals. There's all sorts of things garbage that we're putting into our system, seed oils, and it screws up our biome and our gut biome. And what happens is when your gut biome gets really bad, then you have to take more drastic action. And one of the ways, people take probiotics, right? Well, there's a form of probiotic that it's made from shit. It's made from crap. And so what they do is they'll get a very healthy person, and it could be an Olympic athlete. It's somebody who's at their prime. They're young, they're healthy, they're super fit, and they actually pay them for their poop
Cool.
samples,
Yeah.
right? And for their stool samples. And so you can get like $40 for pooping in a bag if you're super healthy and you give it to one of these clinics. They will dehydrate it, turn it into a powder, and put it in a capsule. And you are literally eating shit. But what it's doing is it is completely redoing your gut biome. And so it's used in the most severe cases, but it is used, and it's not, some kind of a fringe thing. It is actually sanctioned by medical boards dealing with gastrointestinal issues. So it is not a fringe technology. It's a mainstream technology, and it is essentially eating shit.
Well, let's go to other eating. Okay. So
Yeah.
we're going to go to hunger and water, which
Okay.
and again, great chapters, very concise, micro learning. I got a lot of value out of it. And what I love about your approach is you're not using the fear tactic. You're using this is a concern, and given it will be a big problem, here's who's doing it right. Like for instance, California or the gentleman who created the wheat super.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's go with, since you went from eating stools, let's go to
Yeah.
the hunger issue, because 850 million people are hungry or having you called it hunger security, if I recall.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hunger insecurity
Yes. And then by
or food
2050,
insecurity. Food
food
insecurity.
insecurity, and then by 2050 it's going to be another 2 billion on top of that. So we have an issue that's only going to culminate into a disaster if we don't deal with it. And so why don't you share the solution, also what the reader should know about this?
Yeah, so there is a concern about potential famines in Africa and around the world through scarcity of food production. The war in Ukraine is not helping that situation because Russia and Ukraine are two of the top five wheat exporters in the world.
Mhm.
And so when their ships can't leave port with cargo, it can have a devastating consequence on food insecurity around the world. And so technology is essentially the solution. There was a scientist, I forget his name, it's in the book. Obama gave him, I think, the Medal of Freedom. And what he did was he genetically mutated wheat to be more resilient to drought conditions in Africa. And so you could have, larger crops and larger output of wheat production from these genetically modified strains. So technology,
I'm just going to throw the name in real quick. His name is Norman Borlaug.
yeah. So that's his solution was one of the major solutions, but there are other solutions. So there's two gentlemen that wrote a book called The Spatial Web. It's Dan Mapes and Gabriel Rene. I have become good friends with Dan Mapes. We both spoke at a conference together and uh, developed a lovely friendship. He reached out to me after my speech, got my phone number, and he called me and said, I could have given your speech. And I said, what do you mean? And he said, everything that you said, I agree with. And he had given a phenomenal speech on the spatial web, and I'll tell you about the spatial web. And we talked for about an hour. And at the end, he said, you're my new favorite human. And then we have had this ongoing dialogue. He came to Las Vegas recently, and I had a 3-hour lunch with him over at the Four Seasons. And he is the most intelligent human being that I have ever met. And I've met some pretty intelligent people. I've met, quite a few billionaires and governors and presidents. And Dan Mapes is in a class of his own. It was an extraordinary 3 hours. And so he wrote this book called The Spatial Web. And what Dan's vision is, and it truly is an incredible vision, that goes to the issue of hunger and it goes to the issue of water is he visualizes a planet with trillions of sensors, right? So these sensors are connected to everything. They're connected to crops. They're connected to water flows and drainage systems and irrigation systems. And this ability to monitor what is happening in all of these different areas in real time with real information creates an explosion in efficiency.
Mm-hmm.
And that explosion in efficiency, he believes, can 10x the global GDP. And by 10xing the global GDP, it creates an opportunity where you can essentially create abundance for all. You can clothe, feed, and house the world's growing population through increased technological efficiency, through trillions of sensors that are connected in what he calls the spatial web, that is constantly updating its information on a planetary level and is feeding that information into a system that managers can access in real time and get incredible information. So take the Golden Gate Bridge, for example. So today, there are nuts and bolts on the Golden Gate Bridge, and they send up a crew that 24 hours, or not 24, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, there's a crew that is working on the Golden Gate Bridge, and they are checking it for structural integrity. They're checking to see if there are any loose nuts and bolts. They're checking to see if there are any give or insecurity in any of the cabling or any of the structural integrity of the bridge. And what Dan Mapes is envisioning is putting sensors on all of those areas. So every nut and bolt would have a sensor. And if it becomes loose, then the sensor would send a signal. And the signal would dispatch a drone. And the drone would go up and tighten or replace the bolt.
Right.
And that increased efficiency gets rid of the crew that is required today to work 7 days a week throughout the year, all year round, year after year, maintaining the integrity of this bridge, right? So it's just a far superior, more efficient use of resources. And so that team can be deployed into something else that they don't need to be doing that because technology can do that. And so this is what we're moving towards in terms of automation and AI. They are going to replace entire industries. There's going to be a lot of disruption. And I'm not trying to scare anyone. I'm trying to get you comfortable with, what's going to happen and get you used to dealing with it. And, I talk about in the book, I talk about adaptation being a critical part of life. Charles Darwin said it's not the strongest or the most intelligent that survive. It's those most capable of adaptation. And we are going to have to adapt constantly. Your life moving forward is going to be a life of constant adaptation and lifelong learning, right? And you're going to have to learn to surf a technological tsunami and dance with machines. Now, you can become, fearful of this, and you can become paralyzed by fear, or you can become a leader. And leaders don't run from problems, they run at them, right? So I'm not running from any of this. I'm embracing it. I'm grateful to be living in the most extraordinary period in human history. We have an opportunity to create a second enlightenment, right? Where we can leverage technology to house, feed, and clothe the world's planet, educate everyone using technology. But technology will also create disruption, and meaning that, jobs that you have become accustomed to are going to disappear. And this is going to happen in the millions. I was a lawyer for many years. They're going to get rid of lawyers. AI is going to make lawyers obsolete eventually. First, what will happen is lawyers that use AI will replace lawyers that don't use AI. And then AI itself will eventually replace all lawyers. And why is that? Well, because if you can go on your phone and you can ask your phone a question, a legal question, and you can get an accurate answer anywhere in the world, any time of the day or night for free, right? Why would you pay me $1,000 an hour to answer your legal question, right? And if you have a question about the law in Budapest or whatever, I can't help you, right? So I don't know that answer, but the AI will. And so it's just incredible. It's incredibly more efficient. The same thing with doctors. Right now, you have doctors, and there will always be a need for that human touch, maybe in nursing, maybe in some areas of medicine. But eventually, what will happen is I'll pick up my phone, it'll scan my retina,
Mhm.
and it will tell me what is wrong with me more accurately and more quickly than any doctor could. I'll put my finger on the back of the phone. It will read my blood sugar. Eventually, it'll read my blood pressure.
Oh, it does that
And
now.
what's that?
It does that. I have iCardiac and it does that.
Yeah. The phone does the heart right now, right? Or
Right.
the blood right now.
Blood, and it does three measures with
Yeah.
just the finger.
Yeah,
Crazy.
yeah, exactly. So there's gonna the technology is going to change your life in more ways than you can possibly imagine. You'll take a picture of your foot and you'll print shoes on a 3D printer on your kitchen table for your kids, right? You'll be driving down the road and you'll be having a heart attack. And before you even know that you have a heart attack, your watch will sense that you're having that heart attack. And your watch will talk to your car and it will tell your car, here's the nearest hospital. Take us to that hospital. It will also call the hospital, let them know that you're on your way, let them know give them your vital signs. They will call a cardiac surgeon who will be waiting for you as your car drives you up to the emergency. And this all will be happening before you perhaps even feel any physical evidence of a heart attack, right? And so that's the kind of life that you'll have nanobots pulsing through your bloodstream, curing all of your diseases. I was at a conference on longevity recently. I met Aubrey de Grey of the SENS Research Foundation. Aubrey de Grey was the first person to say that the first person who will live to 1,000 is alive today, meaning that a baby born today, over his expected 100-year lifespan, they will increase the human lifespan from that 100 years to 1,000 years. Now, the thing that's important about this is that it doesn't matter if these predictions are off by some multiple. Maybe it's not 1,000 years. Maybe it's 200 years. Maybe it's 300 years. Ray Kurzweil of Google, their head of AI, said that we'll reach the singularity, that moment in time when machine intelligence will eclipse human intelligence by 2029. But he goes on to say that by the 2040s, that intelligence will be 1 billion times more capable than human intelligence. Now, we can't even fathom what an intelligence that is 1 billion times human intelligence means. But what it does clearly mean is that we are in for a wild ride. It is going to be seismic. It is going to be tectonic. Imagine right now we have 3 million truck drivers. When Chrysler Dahmer was doing cross-country driverless semis in 2017. They were testing them with drivers in the cab. So that's almost 10 years ago. We're going to get to the point where we have driverless semis completely without anyone in the cab. That's going to get rid of 3 million jobs. Uber drivers, 5 million jobs.
And a multitude of accidents.
What's that?
And a multitude of accidents.
Well, and ultimately less accidents,
Yeah,
right?
that's what I mean. A multitude of accidents less. It'll
Oh
get
yeah,
worse.
yeah, yeah,
It'll get
yeah.
worse
Yeah,
accidents.
yeah. Oh yeah. I mean the efficiencies are unbelievable because first of all, when the technology is perfected, there will be very few, if any, accidents, number one. So all the auto fatalities will virtually go away. Today, a cat running into the road or a kid's ball running into the road can, screw up an AI vehicle, but they're going to get past all of this. There's going to come a point where it's completely perfected. The other thing that does is you're not going to have the traffic jams that you have on the 405 or on the 5 in LA, because right now that's all stop and start traffic, right? When it's AI, when it's all AI, they will be moving in unison and they will be inches apart from one another and they will not be getting into accidents
Right.
because they will signal each other. And so traffic will just move at 60 miles an hour uninterrupted. It'll be a constant flow. What creates the slowdowns and the traffic jams are the human drivers.
Right.
And so the increased efficiencies are going to be enormous, but the job displacement is also going to be enormous. So you have to learn, how to adapt to this changing environment. We talked earlier about leveraging some of these tools to create movies, right? That's one way that humans can dance with machines. That's one way that you can choreograph something with a machine where it's part human input, it's part machine input, and the product is the collaboration between human and machine. So those who are able to do that, those are the people that are going to have the greatest success moving forward in this new technologically advanced environment. And then there are going to be certain roles for humans that only humans can do. And that might be that might involve empathy, that might involve leadership, that might involve human touch, right? So there are certain things that machines just will never be capable of doing to the level of a human. Leadership might be one of those things. Humans may always prefer to be led by humans, or maybe not. Maybe Larry Page and Elon Musk had a famous conversation about this that Elon Musk relayed, where Musk asked Larry Page, the founder, with Sergey Brin, the founder of Google, he asked Page, "What are you doing with AI to protect humans?" And Larry Page allegedly responded by saying, "Why is your assumption that we should be protecting humans? Why shouldn't we be protecting the machines?" And Elon Musk said, "Well, because I'm human, right?" And Larry Page reportedly said, "So you're a speciesist, meaning you're like a racist against machines." And Musk could not, fathom that Page was taking this position. But basically, what Page was saying was, underlying all of this is your assumption that humans make better stewards of the planet. And I don't necessarily agree with that assumption. Perhaps machines would be better stewards of the planet, right? And so we're going to get into some very, incredible changes that are going to occur. Yuval Noah Harari is an author, a philosopher. He wrote *Sapiens*. He wrote *Homo Deus*. He wrote 21 Things You Should Know About the 21st Century. He spoke at the World Economic Forum in 2018 in Davos. And he said some amazing things. He said, first of all, that organisms are algorithms, and that all you need to recreate the human organism is two things. You need computing power and you need data, primarily biometric data.
Mhm.
And that he said that there are biometric sensors that already exist that can take chemical signals in the body and turn them into electronic signals that a computer can read and understand. And that as we gather more and more data about the human body, that is readable by machines and downloadable into machines, then it's just a question of computing power to be able to take that data and recreate a human being based just on the data. Now, there are scientists in Japan that have already done things like they took a skin sample off the tail of a female mouse, and from that skin sample, they created a gamete, a sperm and an egg from just the female donor. So you didn't need the male for the sperm. They created the gamete from her sample, and they created 8 pups, 8 mice from her tail sample that all had the contributing mother's DNA.
Mm-hmm.
Now, they said, the scientists that were involved in this said that it would be naive to think that we cannot do this with human. We will be able to do this with humans. And so this ties into Harari. Harari said that the main industries of the 21st century will be the manufacturing of bodies and brains. Think about that. The main industries of the 21st century will be the manufacturing of bodies and brains, and that conflicts will not be between blacks and whites, or between rich and poor, or between Christians and Muslims. It will be between the species that we will have created, meaning that we will create all of these augmented, differentiating species because we will be able to.
Mm.
And the relationships between those species will spawn conflict. Much like the transgender movement today spawns conflict between people who don't understand, their life choices and their behavior and their beliefs, and so it creates conflict. Well, if you're creating species that look very different than everyone else and act very different than everyone else and have powers that are different than everybody else, that too can create conflict. So, and if you have scientists that are, manufacturing humans, that have the DNA of 5 women or the DNA of 5 men, that could create ethical and moral and medical and religious and philosophical issues, right? So these are all the changes that are possible. These are things that are in part already happening. They're certainly being discussed, not enough. We need to be talking about them more. This is one of the reasons why I'm out talking about the things that I'm talking about, because I believe that humanity has a stake in this. We all have a stake in this. And I think we're at a tipping point where we could move into a second enlightenment that could be a glorious future for all of us, a utopian style second enlightenment where we feed, house, clothe the planet and want for nothing. I think that's possible through technology. And I also think it's possible that that same technology in the wrong hands could create a very dystopian environment. And which way we tip is going to depend on us. We're going to have to raise our voices. We're going to have to be heard. We're going to have to, finally create accountability in our elected representatives, which we don't have today. They have been co-opted by special interests. We need to take back the power, and we need to be, leaders that have a voice in our future. The future isn't something you walk into. The future is something you create. And so we have an opportunity to create that future. And I believe that begins with awareness. Sheryl Sandberg of Facebook said, she was the COO of Facebook, the only woman on their board of directors, brilliant. She worked as chief of staff to Larry Summers. And she said, you cannot change that which you are unaware of. But once you are aware, you cannot help but change.
Mm-hmm.
So awareness is key. And I may not be able to solve the world's problems, but I can create awareness of what I know. And I don't know everything. Aristotle once said, the man who thinks he knows everything knows nothing at all. And I always tell my wife, there's only one thing I know for certain. And she looks at me and, like, what do you mean there's only one thing you know for certain? And I tell her, listen, Musk says, when asked, what would you ask God? He said, I'd ask her what's happening outside the sim, meaning this could all be a simulation, right? I don't know that he's wrong. I don't know that he's right, right? I don't know. So what am I certain of, right? I'm certain that there will always be a great deal that I do not know. Of that, I am certain. Okay. There's a great deal that I do not know right now, and there will always be a great deal that I do not know. So, the rest, I don't know. I mean, I don't even know if I'm sitting here having this conversation as a live human entity, or if this is part of a path mapped out for me by a simulation. I don't know. Anything is possible. I think anything is possible, and the more technology advances, the more that will become self-evident. And so, if you think about it, what technology can do today is astonishing. If I went back to 1969 in NASA and I said, hey guys, you're putting this man on the moon, you got a room full of computers. My phone here that my daughter has and my 10-year-old niece have, it has 100,000 times the computing power that you have in this room. They would have put me in an insane asylum. They would have thought I was crazy, right? That was 50 some years ago, right? All right, so where are we going to be 50 some years from now? And we're going to be, it's a multiple, it's a vast multiple of the past 50 years, because we're not playing with Moore's law anymore. Moore's law was computers. Computers would increase in power every 18 months and halve in cost. This has happened for 50 years. AI is a whole different thing. So you look at ChatGPT 4 and you look at ChatGPT 5. It's not 18 months and it's not a doubling. In some areas, it's a 10x. In some areas, it's a 1,000x, and it didn't take 18 months. So that level of multiple is only going to increase, right? It's not like they need more time for ChatGPT 6. They've got it. They just released 5. They've got 6. They just don't have the guardrails in place. They can't give it to us because it's too powerful. The head of Microsoft was quoted as saying, we're being very judicious about what we're releasing to the public, right? Because they don't want people creating nuclear bombs with their phone. Okay. So the technology is here. It's already here. It's coming like a tsunami. What will surprise everyone will be the speed of change and the magnitude of change. So change is coming like a freight train, like a tsunami. You got to get on board. You got to get behind it. You got to be open-minded. You've got to, embrace it and learn it. And you've got to create awareness, and you've got to watch, people that are following it and learn from them so that you're more aware. And don't think that this doesn't apply to you. Pericles once said, just because you don't have an interest in politics doesn't mean politics doesn't have an interest in you. Well, just because you don't have an interest in any of what I'm talking about doesn't mean it's not going to have an interest in you. It's very much going to have an interest in you. And, you can be manipulated by this technology. Our brains receive 11 million bits of information every second of the day. And 99% of it comes in through our subconscious, outside of our conscious awareness. So our brain is at once our most important tool and weapon, and at the same time, our greatest vulnerability. We can be manipulated. Kurzweil says we'll go to sleep and we'll wake up learning a new language. So in 24 hours, you'll go to sleep, you'll wake up learning 12 hours. You'll go to sleep, you'll wake up learning a new language. Now, if they can do that, then they can program you in other ways, right? You can go to sleep and wake up having a new ideology, right? Having a new philosophy, having a new belief system, right? You can go to bed a Muslim, you can wake up a Christian, I mean, there's all sorts of things that can happen. So this is the magnitude of what we're dealing with. And again, Ken, you said something earlier about, not trying to scare people. I don't want to scare anybody.
Right.
I want to empower people. I want you to celebrate what I'm talking about. I want you to learn to embrace it and celebrate it and use it to your advantage. Wherever you are in life, whatever you're doing with your life today, you have an opportunity to leapfrog over other people that are ahead of you economically or socially, right? A kid from a forgotten neighborhood in the Bronx can take ChatGPT 5 and can become the next Spike Lee, can become, the next Elon Musk. And so that's the opportunity. That's the grandeur of and the excitement of living in this age. So don't be scared. Be motivated, be inspired, be motivated. That's what I hope you do. And so that's why I'm speaking. That's why I'm on social media. I do a Substack, which I'm very, very excited about. I'm writing every single day. I write an article about all of these types of things, right? So everything that I'm researching, everything that I come across, when I find something that I think is like, oh my God, I didn't know that, I'll research it as a trained researcher, as a trained lawyer researcher, right, who's argued before the US Supreme Court. I'll research it and I'll write about it and I'll post it on my Substack that you can subscribe to, and you will learn something every day. And if you subscribe to that Substack, it's $8 a month. I guarantee you the 30 articles that you will read during that month are worth way more than the $8 that you will have paid to be a subscriber. So, I hope you subscribe. I hope you get Millennial Samurai. You can download a free copy of the book at millennialsamurai.com, all 444 pages. So it's not all about making money.
Right.
If you want a hard copy, you go to Amazon, you get a hard copy, get one, read it to your children, read it yourself, learn what's coming, leverage what's coming, and elevate your life. Elevate your life into, you have this one and only life, right? What are you doing with it? What are you going to do with it? What could you do with it? And the answer is you could do amazing things. Anything is possible to you if you believe in yourself and you believe in your future and you believe in others. Then anything is possible, right? So that's what I'm, people tell me, preach it, preach it, George, and sort of sometimes I feel that way. Like, one woman said you're like St. Paul howling to the wolves, howling in the wind. And maybe that's what it looks like. I'm just a 67-year-old Greek guy who's telling you what he knows and trying to change some lives, trying to make a mark and improve the world and trying to change some lives.
That's awesome. I do have a couple of things I wanted to interject, and I didn't want to interrupt. So I'll just say that Tesla had a report of how many cars cause accidents that are without intelligence versus with the auto drive. And it was a fraction of 1%. And they said that fraction of 1% was actually caused by human error on top, because they reprogrammed something that did not need to be reprogrammed for the car to do what it's supposed to do. Then I also wanted to show you, I have a book called Diagrams. And in that book, there is the knowledge diagram. And this is not representative of what really you would never see how little you know, but this is what you know, and this is what you don't know, and this is all the stuff that you don't know. It's
Yeah.
an outrageous amount. And like
That's
I said, it's really a sliver of what you know. It's so
yeah.
small you can't even get a line small enough to make it.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's do you know have you heard about the Dunning-Kruger effect?
No, tell me.
So the Dunning-Kruger effect, there were these two psychologists named Dunning and Kruger, and they did studies. And what they found was that an ignoramus, somebody who knows nothing, if you give them one page on artificial intelligence and ask them what percentile they would place themselves in their knowledge of artificial intelligence, it would be a higher percentile than what the head of artificial intelligence for Google would place himself in. So the expert would say, well, I'm in the top 5 percentile, right? But the ignoramus would say they're in the top 1 percentile,
Right.
because a little bit of knowledge
Yes.
makes them think that they know far more than they do.
Right.
Whereas the guy with a ton of knowledge knows how much he doesn't know,
Exactly.
right? He's more aware of what he doesn't know than the person who's generally ignorant. And so we see a lot of this on social media. We see people who are very wedded to their beliefs. Their brains, this, it's not their fault, actually. It's their brains. Their brains are telling them that they're right about something because so take a Hamas terrorist, right? A Hamas terrorist is out there and he's committing atrocities, but he thinks that he's doing the right thing, right? Why? Because the vast amount of information in his brain is information that tells him that he's doing the right thing. Okay? All of his belief systems, everybody that he's surrounded by, all the people he talks to every day, everything he listens to, everything he reads, every sermon he hears, all tells him to think a certain way.
Right.
So when he acts a certain way, his brain is telling him, well, of course you're doing the right thing. All the data points in your brain are telling me you're doing the right thing. And so he believes that. But so when your brain is filled with misinformation, then your brain gives you false, responses, false direction.
100%. I wanted to show you, you talked about the 10x of abundance in the world if we are in the tipping point to
Yeah.
make better decisions. And I knew this from back in the day, but I just found a new chart here. And it's that everyone staying shoulder to shoulder would fit in Los Angeles. So just to kind of say 8 billion people could fit in such a finite area in just one geometric area says how much room we have in the world to live abundantly.
Yeah, so I just actually did a Substack article on a parallel issue. There was a study done by a scientist with mice. And what he did was he put a small group of mice together into an environment, and everything that they could possibly want was in that environment. They had all the food they needed, they had all the water they needed, they had shelters, they had everything that they needed, right? Well, in the beginning, the mice began to populate and, became 100 mice, became 1,000 mice, became 3,000 mice. And as this mice population grew, there was one constant. All of their needs were supplied.
Hmm.
All the water that 3,000 mice needed was there. All of the food that 3,000 mice needed was there. Everything was there for them. But as their population grew, they became more and more dysfunctional in a confined space. Like if you put everybody in Los Angeles, right? And what happened is they started fighting with each other. They became psychotic. They withdrew. They stopped having children. They started cannibalizing. They're young. They had they had a group called the Beautiful Mice that were big and withdrew. They didn't fight. They didn't have sex. They just withdrew. And then you had the battling mice, and ultimately they ended up all expiring. They ended up all dying
Hmm.
um, because of the way that they interacted with one another. And so, they stopped eating. They completely withdrew. They became psychotic, and that was the end of the experiment. And so I wrote about this in Substack and I gave details about this experiment, right? So, and I just wrote this last night. So this is the type of thing, right, that you would learn about on my Substack. Another thing I wrote about recently was the patents that have been filed by companies like Google, Microsoft, Facebook, Amazon. What kind of patents have these companies filed? Because when you look at their patent filings, you can tell where they're going in terms of their trajectory, right? What are some of the things that they think are going to be the next breakthrough technologies that they want to have a handle on or involvement in? And it's pretty wild when you see the stuff that they are filing. So no one's talking about it. You're not going to see it on the media. You're not going to see it on social media because these are not actual products that exist today. They're just the ideas of their creatives and their engineers. Things like walking through walls, you know, I mean, just stuff that would blow you away. And so, how do you learn about that? And you can learn about it on my Substack. Here's another just quick example of why this is important. There's a thing called the information flow. You want to be in the right information flow. Okay. So you have to think about like how you spend your time. Okay. So how many hours are you spending reading a book? Right? And what's in that book? And how much of the time spent on reading that book is signal? And how much of the time reading that book is noise? Right? Things that you don't need to know. So, like when I gave my book to as a manuscript to get me some feedback, one of the people I gave it to was the doorman at a high rise that I was living in at the time in Las Vegas, and he was a Korean gentleman, broken English, who read a lot of personal empowerment books, he told me. And so he was very anxious to read mine. And he came back and he was thrilled. He was raving about it. And he said, "What I love about your book is," he said, "I'll buy a book on positive thinking. And it's 200 pages. And I have to read 200 pages to learn about positive thinking. When really I could have learned everything I needed to know in 10 pages on positive thinking. Your book is very short chapters. I learn a great deal in a very small amount of time." Okay. Today, Ken, I really don't even read books because to me, the value time exchange does not pencil out. It takes me too long to read a book, and there's too much noise in the book. So I would rather take the book, go to ChatGPT 5 and say, "Give me an executive summary of this book," and I'll read the executive summary.
Right.
And I'll draw out the most salient points, the things I need to know, and I'll do it in a matter of minutes instead of a matter of hours. So time management is very, very important. So, so anyway, this is one of the things that I've learned is that you have to be in the right information flow. You have to learn efficiently. So let's talk about information flow for a minute. In 1998, domain names came out. ICANN, the Internet Corporation for Assigned Names and Numbers, came out with domain names. And in 1998, you could have bought pets.com. Somebody did, right? But by 1999, all of those great names were gone, right? Because the people that knew about ICANN and knew about domain names and were in the inside, they understood the power of those domain names. They understood the power of the internet. They understood what those domain names were going to mean, and they started buying them all up, right? So by 1 year, all the great names were gone. In 2010, Bitcoin came out and it was 10 cents. Today, it's over $100,000, but it was 10 cents in 2010. Had you been in the information flow, in the right information flow, you'd be a multimillionaire today or a billionaire because you would have understood the significance of Bitcoin, and you would have bought as much of it as you could for 10 cents a piece. You had the same opportunity in 2015 with Ethereum. You could have bought Ethereum for 6 or 8 cents, right? Had you been in the information flow in 2015, the right information flow. In 2017, CryptoPunks came out, a company called Larva Labs introduced CryptoPunks, and they gave away 10,000 CryptoPunks for free. You could have gotten one for free if you were following Larva Labs, right? And in 2017, they were released. 2018, nobody cared. 2019, nobody cared. 2020, Beeple appeared at Christie's and sold his NFT called Everydays, 5,000 days of graphic images that he'd created over 5,000 days. It's called Everydays. Sold it for like $63 or $68 million. Same month that Christie's sold an original Van Gogh for $15 million. He's selling for over $60 million. And what happened was when that took place, everybody said, what are NFTs? And then they started looking and they saw CryptoPunks that had been created in 2017, and they started buying them. From 2020 to 2022, CryptoPunks did over $2 billion in trading. $2 billion. There were CryptoPunks that you got for free, that along the way you could have bought for $5, $10, $20, $30, that sold for $30 million. Okay. This all relates to being in the right information flow. So now think about this. You've got a trained researcher, right? You've got a lawyer who worked for one of the largest firms in the world with a Supreme Court unanimous victory, who's researching the future, who spoke at Google, who's a voracious reader, who's inhaling information every day, all day, and who's writing about the most interesting things he discovers every single day. And you can have access to that for $8 a month. Now, what is the value of that, and what might you learn? And the answer is there's many values. Number one, you might learn about the next CryptoPunks. You might learn about the next Bitcoin, about the next Ethereum, about the next domain name, right? You may learn about a new technology, right? There is a battery that has just come out. It's the size of a dime, and it can power your pacemaker for 50 years. Within a year, it will be powering your phone for 50 years. Within 2 years, it will be powering drones that will stay afloat for 50 years. Okay. They are mining helium on the moon. The Chinese are mining helium on the moon. You can power a city with the helium that they're mining, right? So these are all breakthrough technologies. Asteroid mining is going to be a huge growth industry in the future. They've identified an asteroid called Davida that has $100 trillion worth of precious metals. $100 trillion. And the metals on Davida are not the most important thing on Davida. They've also discovered water. And water, H2O, is what all of the rocket fuel to power all of NASA's 125 flights has come from H2O. So asteroids are going to be the gas stations. In order to take a ton of rocket fuel up to out of Earth's atmosphere, you have to burn 10 tons to take 1 ton up. You can't do it. So you're going to have to make the fuel in space, and you're going to make it on asteroids. There are going to be asteroid belts that will allow interplanetary colonization. They will be the gas stations. They will be a whole new industry. So, what if you could have learned about Coca-Cola when it first came out? What if you could have understood the importance of Amazon when it first came out? Name any of these: McDonald's, Kentucky Fried Chicken, anything, Legos. So that's what being in the information flow means. Okay. In addition to that, just having this information, you pointed this out earlier when you were talking about my book, it makes you more knowledgeable and more attractive, right? You're at a dinner party. You have more that you can talk about. You're in an interview. You have more that you can talk about, right? You're at a bar picking up a girl. You have more that you can talk about, right? So it just makes you that much more formidable and that much more resilient and that much more adaptive and anti-fragile. Knowledge is power. And you need to develop a love of learning. Today you might love chocolate chip cookies, or today you might love pasta, or you might love pizza. Well, you know what? You need to, transition to a love of learning. I mean, an actual love of it. And because it's your future, it's everything.
Well, you
And
also talk about the knowledge is power, but you talk about the magic of action. And if you don't have knowledge and power, it's actually just potential. It's not going to do anything. I
yeah,
did I did want to acknowledge that not only have I met you many times, but one time you didn't understand why I asked you to hold a smile card. And I just want to tell you the reason I did, it was to honor people that bring smiles to the world. And my dissertations are on what is your SPH, what are your smiles per hour. And I think what you've done with your book and what you've done in your pastoral efforts to wake the world up is you are increasing the amount of smiles per hour, which are associated with abundance and associated with enlightenment. So
yeah.
I did want to show people the photo very quickly.
I want you to send me that photo.
I will send it to you. And then have you ever had anyone say you look like Craig Nelson?
Craig Nelson, no.
Well, let me tell you why I'm saying this. Think about the fact that you said I'm only here so long and someone's going to have my story. Well, Malcolm Gladwell talks about people being in the right place at the right time and all this stuff. And it makes sense why they got so big. Well, if someone was to play you, I thought Craig Nelson should play you.
Oh, that's interesting. That's interesting.
Yeah.
I
So
get I get Richard Gere a lot.
yeah, Richard Gere definitely. And by the way, a hybrid of the two of you, but Richard Gere would play you very well. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Well, it has been an amazing conversation. There's so many more topics. And as I alluded to earlier, not only would I love to be the person who actually gets your book out in the world more, but I would like to have maybe that book 2, book 3, or just the division of these topics go deeper. But this was, for the audience's sake, an awakening that there's so many different things to talk about. And I have notes upon notes that we didn't get to. So it does speak to the fact that there's a lot more to say, and I am benefiting. There's a gentleman named Charlie Tremendous Jones. You may recall him. He said the difference between where you are today and where you'll be 5 years from now are the books you read and the people you meet. Well, that was pre-internet.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
in the micro learning game, I'd say the difference between where you are today and where you'll be in 5 minutes could be the micro
Yeah.
learning you. Because to your point, if someone had known about it and was insistent, like I just have to buy the Ethereum or whatever.
You would have bought it.
Yes.
If you and I were having lunch today and I said, well, here I will. I'll tell you right now. So Dan Mapes, who I mentioned, he and Gabriel Byrne have created a publicly traded company called Verses, Verses. Okay. Now, it may have its ups and downs, and all companies have challenges and need to acquire financing and things like that. I think he's raised about $150 million. His AI product went head to head with ChatGPT, OpenAI, on a code breaking contest. They were given 100 encrypted codes, both of the AIs, Genius and ChatGPT, or OpenAI's entry. And Genius broke all 100 codes in less than 5 minutes. OpenAI was reported as having taken 274 hours, and it only broke 80 of the encrypted codes, not 100 of them. And then they did an energy consumption test, and Genius spent something like 5 cents in energy consumption, and OpenAI spent, like quite a bit more, maybe thousands of dollars in energy consumption. And so I believe that Versus, it's publicly traded, it's an over-the-counter stock. This is not financial advice. I'm not telling anybody to go out and buy it. But I am telling you that I'm aware of it and that it's not widely publicized. Not many people are aware of it. And it's certainly something that I'm going to own. Now, Dan, when I had lunch with him, actually said to me, I said, Dan, what do you think of Bitcoin? And Dan had made a fortune in Bitcoin. He was an AI scientist at Berkeley with when IBM Big Blue beat Kasparov in chess, one of the earliest examples of AI. He was an AI scientist at Berkeley. And now he's got a publicly traded AI company, but he originally funded it with Bitcoin profits. He made a fortune in Bitcoin and he self-funded this AI company. And then he went out and raised 150 million extra. Okay. And I asked him, what do you think about Bitcoin? And he said that he thinks it's going to have a huge increase. In fact, I don't even want to say because I don't.
I've heard too.
Yeah,
It's a
yeah,
long, how big?
yeah. Um, he thinks it's going to be at $1 million, but I won't even say how quickly. But it's quick. And so anyway, I said, should I buy Versus stock? I'm thinking about, Bitcoin and Versus stock. And he said, buy Bitcoin now and then take your profits. He said, it'll go up. And then like it has for the last 10 times, it'll go up and then it'll come down. There will be a violent swing up and down. He said, I think it'll move up towards 1 million and then it'll come crashing down and then it'll do another of the same roller coasters. Now, there's less volatility in Bitcoin I've been noticing today than there has been in the past because institutions are now getting involved. BlackRock is involved. There's a BlackRock ETF, which I've put money into, a substantial amount of money into BlackRock ETF. And there is they have a Ethereum ETF as well. They just the Trump administration is like, four horsemen of the apocalypse that are, on top of this. You've got Trump, you've got the Secretary of Treasury, Scott Bessent, you've got the Secretary of Commerce, Howard Lutnick, you've got the Internet czar, I forgot his name. He's the guy on social media, very famous. Anyway, you've got all these guys. You've got Trump's sons that just made $6 billion off crypto. These people are into this very heavily, and so the technology itself has a supply and demand equation that suggests that it's going to go parabolic. Every 4 years, what miners are paid halves, and so there's less production and there's more demand.
Mm-hmm.
And now you've got increased demand and you've got increased regulation. So you look at the wild west that crypto was, and now the Trump administration is crafting all the regulatory framework. There's a parallel here to the New York Stock Exchange. Used to be the wild west, and then they put in the Securities Act of 1933 and the Securities Act of 1934, and that allowed it to flourish and become a blue chip place for money to go into.
Mm-hmm.
The same thing is happening with Bitcoin. And so I believe it's the currency of the future. You can't, the US dollar, you can keep printing, right? They keep printing it. We have $35 trillion in debt. You get in a Democrat administration that wants to pander to its constituency and give away free things to everybody. And they will print money. You look at, World War II, Germany, the Deutsche Mark took a wheelbarrow of Deutsche Marks to buy a loaf of bread. Devaluing the currency by printing excessive amounts can happen. You see AOC asking for $10 trillion in spending, right? So I'm afraid for the dollar, personally. And again, this isn't investment advice, but I'm afraid for the dollar. I'm not comfortable with it. And so I'm transitioning into alternative assets, real estate, Bitcoin, gold, alternative assets. And so I believe there's a huge future. Anyway, Mapes told me buy Bitcoin. As it goes up, start selling off, taking your profits before it drops. Don't just hold forever. Get your money out, take your winnings, and then put that into verses, is what he told me. And so that's, frankly, what I'm doing.
So we have 7 more questions. Are you ready?
Yeah.
Here we go. The only other thing from your book I want to ask you, that's just one more thing. The other things are the closing questions of the show. So the last thing I want to ask is we have hundreds and hundreds of apps on our phone. You had a beautiful little section of 40 apps you should have. Give me 3 or 4 that most people don't know to get, and maybe just one sentence or two, just why you should get them.
Oh God, I gotta look.
Okay, I can also hop on that page. I don't know if I have it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Uh,
well, and books
so
to read.
first of all, the number one app that I would tell people to get is Substack.
Okay.
Because forget about reading books. Okay. Reading books are a waste of time. Read Substack articles. Go on Substack and find people who are luminaries, who are visionaries, who are people that are writing things that you need to read, and follow them. You can follow most people for free. Most people also have a paid subscription. So you can follow me for free, or you can do the paid subscription. The difference is that there's a paywall on some of the articles where you can only read so far if it's free, and then the rest is for paid subscribers. It's sort of like, bonus information. If you're paying your $8 a month, you get this bonus information. So, for the price of a Starbucks venti or whatever, you can learn an incredible amount in 1 month for $8. And that what you learn could make you thousands of dollars, right? Or help you avoid major mistakes. So it's very, very much worth it. That would be my number one app.
Well, and
Um,
by the way, it's not in the book, so that's an amendment we'll add, plus a QR code in the back to go ahead and download it. So, RoboKiller.
um, RoboKiller, yeah, to get rid of garbage on your phone.
Yeah, spam calls. 90% of spam calls.
Yeah, yeah. That's good. I've got
You got Think Dirty.
Mighty is for Mighty Networks.
Yep.
There are all sorts of platforms on Mighty. Mighty Network is a platform, and there are all sorts of businesses and learning tools and groups and communities on the Mighty Networks platform. So Uvolution.io is being built on the Mighty Networks platform. So Substack and Mighty Networks would be two definite downloads.
I'm glad I'm asking you this, George, because those two are not in the book. So the
Yeah.
second book and also the modifications you're making to Substack keep you up to date on what the newest. Because Signal's not as big nowadays, but it was huge back when you wrote this book.
Yep. WhatsApp, of course.
Yeah, of course.
If you're not using that, it's encrypted communications. So if you want to have private communications with someone else, WhatsApp or Signal are both alternatives for you.
Yeah,
Uh, I'm
Gapsy.
sorry, Yapsy.
Yeah, you had that as making a 3D avatar of yourself. I know some
Okay,
of the data right now. So, yeah. So maybe in the notes when we launch this show, we'll just put little links to some apps, including Substack.
sure,
Okay.
absolutely.
All right, my 5 exit questions, and then my magical one. Well, let's do the magic one first. How can people reach out to you, support you, and celebrate you?
Just another app, Medium.
Mhm.
Medium has articles that you should also. It's all about learning. So anything that you can learn from, I'm very supportive of. So what was that question now?
How can people reach out to you, connect with
Okay.
you, or celebrate you?
So you can reach out to me. directly, if you'd like to, at GJ Chanos, GJCHANOS at gmail.com. That's my direct email. So feel free to reach out to me. You can follow me on Substack at George J. Chanos, and that should be on the posting, the spelling of my name, but it's George J. CHANOS as in Sam. I post regularly every day on Substack. I also post on LinkedIn under the same name. I post on Facebook under the same name, and I post on Instagram under the same name. So under my name, George J. Chanos.
Perfect. So our 5 exit questions called rapid fire. You don't need to expand on them, but maybe one sentence or two at most is needed. So book that changed your life.
Geez, there's that changed my life. Probably Ogilvy on Advertising when I was 12 was very impactful to me. I had an interest in advertising. I almost became a creative director at an ad agency instead of going to law, but my life plan had already kind of been designed by then. But I was very interested in becoming a creative director, and Ogilvy on Advertising taught me something that has helped me throughout my life, probably more than any other thing that I ever learned, which is the concept of a helicopter perspective. Ogilvy basically talked about people who could rise above any situation and look at it from 360 degrees, right? Look at it from all angles, all perspectives, right? So I use that during my practice of law for 30 years. I use it today. I've always used it since I first read about it when I was 12 years old. I've always tried to see all issues from all sides, all angles. When you think of alternative perspectives, people who think differently than you do, that's an alternative perspective. Do not consider those alternative perspectives threats. Consider them assets. Mm-hmm. They are assets that give you this helicopter 360-degree perspective of things. This is essential for complex problem solving and critical thinking. So that would probably have to be, the biggest book. Of Mice and Men, Steinbeck, The Art of War was another, book that I used.
Your list is amazing, by the way, in the book. Amazing. Yeah. Yeah. We will spend some time on books and learning and micro learning in the next one, if you'd like. A movie that inspires you.
A movie that inspires me. Ben-Hur is one of my classical favorites. The Sting with Paul Newman and Robert Redford was a great book. Let's see. The Godfather series I loved.
Good ones.
Yeah, those would be my favorite movies.
Okay. Some favorite song that gets you going, or your favorite group?
Oh, geez. So I have a kind of very eclectic taste in music. Favorite group would probably be the Beatles or the Rolling Stones.
Those are good.
Yeah.
All right. And who's your hero?
Abraham Lincoln and Winston Churchill have both been lifelong heroes. There are others that I'm impressed by, but I wouldn't necessarily call them heroes. So I'll stick with Lincoln and Churchill.
Did you see the movie? I guess it was The Final Hour, The Darkest Hour?
I didn't.
I promise you, it's as good as Lincoln with Spielberg. It's called The Darkest Hour. It's the 2 days or 5 days of Winston Churchill, no one wanted him to be the prime minister.
At the door. Huh?
Darkest Hour, no one wanted him to be the prime minister.
Yeah. All right, I'll watch it. I love Churchill.
It's a wonderful one. All right, and my final question is, what quote do you live by?
What quote? Robert F. Kennedy once said, "Only those who dare to fail greatly can ever hope to achieve greatly." So you have to put yourself out there. You have to be willing to fail. And I don't view failure as a negative. I view it as a learning experience. Every action that I take in life, one of two things are going to happen. Either I am going to succeed or I am going to learn.
Awesome. Well, we have Dr. Renee Noor and Dr. Greg Reed and a multitude of other masterminds to thank for us having a continued frequency. And frequency is consistency, which is integrity, that one is showing up in the world the right way, or that you need to pay attention that they could be the one that could change your life. So thank you, George, for being part of the show and waking the world that a lot of things are possible right now. I'm very excited that our conversation is going to change my life and my son's lives.
Well, Ken, thank you. I'm glad we met each other at Renee's event again, and we've bumped into each other many times. I'm glad to understand better what you're doing with the small smile card. I do like it, and I am going to push out that photograph if you send it to me. I'm going to put that on my social media so other people can understand what you're doing and why it's important and why it's good. And as far as working with me on the book, I would love to have you. I would love to have you, help me. I'm not a marketer. That's not my strong suit. So I need all the help I can get in that area.
Oh, we're going to change it. So thank you so much for being on the show and look forward to another show soon.
Thank you so much.